In the heart of the great Neander forest, where the trees whispered secrets and the rivers sang lullabies, there was a small village called Luma. It was a village known for its peace and harmony. The villagers lived simple lives, farming, fishing, and telling stories by the fire every night. Among the villagers were two humble farmers, Delilah and Nathan, who had longed for a child for many years. Their prayers were finally answered when a baby boy was born to them. They named him Luca, for he was truly the joy of their lives. Luca grew up surrounded by love. Delilah would sing him sweet songs as she rocked him to sleep, and Nathan would carve wooden toys for him, teaching him the ways of the land. But fate had a different plan for Luca. On the night of his third birthday, a terrible storm swept through the village. The winds howled like wild beasts, and the sky was torn apart by jagged lightning. The villagers huddled in their homes, praying for safety, but Delilah and Nathan's prayers would go unanswered that night. As the storm raged on, a shadow descended upon Luma. It was not just any shadow but the enormous, dark silhouette of a dragon. This dragon was not like the creatures from the old tales, feared and hated by all. Sailor, as she was called, was a dragon with a heavy heart. She had once been a guardian of the mountains, but a curse had bound her to wander the earth, longing for the family she could never have. Sailor was drawn to the village by a feeling she couldn't explain, as if something, or someone, was calling out to her. As she hovered above the village, she heard the faint cry of a child. Following the sound, she found herself at the edge of the village, where Luca's small hut stood. With a gentle breath, Sailor blew away the storm clouds around the hut, and in a moment of strange calm, she peered through the window. Inside, she saw Delilah cradling Luca, trying to soothe his fears. But when Delilah looked up and saw the dragon, she screamed, clutching Luca tightly. Nathan grabbed a stick, though he knew it would be no match for a dragon. He shouted at Sailor, trying to scare her away, but the dragon did not move. She only gazed at Luca with eyes full of sorrow and longing. In that instant, Sailor's heart made a decision. She could not explain why, but she knew that this child was special. With a swift movement, she reached into the hut and snatched Luca from Delilah's arms. Delilah screamed and Nathan tried to fight back, but the dragon was already soaring into the stormy sky, Luca safe in her grasp. The villagers gathered, hearing Delilah's cries, but it was too late. The dragon was gone, and with her, the only son of Delilah and Nathan. The village mourned, but none as deeply as Delilah and Nathan. They searched the forest for days, calling out Luca's name, but there was no sign of the boy or the dragon. Far from the village, high in the mountains, Sailor carried Luca to a hidden cave where she lived. The cave was warm and filled with glowing crystals that lit up the dark corners like stars. It was a place of magic and mystery, a place where no human had ever set foot. Sailor gently placed Luca on a soft bed of moss and watched him as he slept. She felt a strange warmth in her chest, a feeling she had not known in centuries. She had taken the boy on impulse, driven by a longing she could not understand. But now, as she looked at him, she knew that this was where he was meant to be. As the days turned into weeks, Luca began to grow in the care of Sailor. He was not afraid of the dragon, for he could feel her love. Sailor was not just a guardian, she was like a mother to him. She taught him the ways of the dragons, how to understand the language of the wind and the songs of the mountains. He learned to ride on her back, soaring above the clouds, feeling the rush of the wind against his face. But Luca never forgot his parents. He would often dream of Delilah's lullabies and Nathan's stories. He would wake up with tears in his eyes, longing for the warmth of their embrace. Sailor noticed his sadness, and though it pained her, she knew she could not keep him forever. One day, as they were flying over the mountains, Sailor asked Luca, "My son, do you miss your village?" Luca looked down at the world below and nodded. "Yes, Mother Sailor. I miss my home, and I miss my parents. But I also love you. You have given me so much, and I don't want to leave you." Sailor's heart ached at his words, but she knew what she had to do. "You are a child of both worlds, Luca," she said. "You were born among humans, but you have grown among dragons. It is time for you to find your true path." I will help you return to your village, but you must promise me one thing. What is it, Mother Sailor? Luca asked. Promise me that no matter what happens, you will never forget what you have learned here. You are not just a human boy, Luca. You are more than that. You have the heart of a dragon, and that is something no one can take from you. Luca promised, and with a heavy heart, Sailor began to prepare him for his journey. She gave him a scale from her own bag, a symbol of her protection. This will keep you safe, Luca, she said. But remember, not all dangers are physical. Some dangers come from within, from the hearts of those who do not understand. Luca listened carefully, his heart pounding with a mix of excitement and fear. He was eager to see his parents again, but he was also nervous about what he might find. What if they didn't recognize him? What if they didn't love him anymore? These thoughts weighed heavily on his mind as he set out on his journey. Sailor flew with him to the edge of the forest, where the village of Luma lay hidden among the trees. She could go no further, for the magic that bound her to the mountains would not allow it. She watched as Luca walked away, a heart torn between pride and sorrow. She had raised him as her own, but now it was time for him to find his true place in the world. As Luca approached the village, he noticed that things were not as he remembered. The huts were smaller, the people seemed weary, and the air was filled with an uneasy tension. He kept his hood up, hiding his face as he walked through the narrow paths. The villagers stared at him with suspicion, whispering among themselves. When he reached the place where his home once stood, he found it empty. The walls were crumbling, and the roof had caved in. His heart sank. What had happened to his parents? Where were they? He wandered the village, asking anyone he met, but no one seemed to know or care. It wasn't until he met an old woman named Margaret that he got his first clue. Margaret was sitting by the fire, weaving a basket, when Luca approached her. She looked up at him with kind, wise eyes, and said, "You're not from around here, are you, child?" Luca hesitated, then shook his head. "I'm looking for my parents," he said. "Their names are Delilah and Nathan. Do you know them?" Margaret's eyes softened with pity. "Oh, Delilah and Nathan," she said. "They were good people, but they left the village many years ago. They were heartbroken after their son was taken by a dragon. They searched for him everywhere but eventually gave up hope. They went to live in the village of Nombari, far to the east. It's a long journey, child, but if you're determined, you might find them there." Luca thanked Margaret and set off once again, his heart heavy but his resolve strong. He had come too far to give up now. The journey to Nombari was long and filled with dangers. He had to cross rivers, climb mountains, and navigate through dense forests. But Luca was no ordinary boy, he had the strength and wisdom of the dragons to guide him. Along the way, he encountered many challenges. He had to outsmart a cunning hyena who tried to steal his food, escape from a pack of wild dogs, and cross a river filled with crocodiles. Each time, he remembered Sailor's teachings and used the skills he had learned to overcome the obstacles. As he neared Nombari, Luca's heart began to race. He was so close to finding his parents, but he was also filled with doubt. What if they didn't want him back? What if they had moved on? These fears gnawed at him, but he pushed them aside and kept going. When he finally reached Nombari, he found it to be a bustling village, much larger than Luma. He wandered through the crowded streets, asking anyone who would listen if they knew of Delilah and Nathan. After hours of searching, he was directed to a small hut on the outskirts of the village. Luca's heart pounded as he approached the hut. He could hear the faint sound of laughter inside, and his hand trembled as he reached for the door. What would he find inside? Would his parents recognize him after all these years? He took a deep breath and knocked on the door. The laughter stopped, and a moment later, the door creaked open. Standing before him was a woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. Her hair was streaked with gray, and her face was lined with years of worry, but Luca recognized her immediately. "Mother," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. Delilah's eyes widened in shock, and for a moment, she didn't move. Then, tears filled her eyes, and she reached out to touch his face. "Luca, is it really you?" she asked, her voice trembling. Luca nodded, tears streaming down his cheeks. "It's me, Mother. I've come back." Delilah pulled him into a tight embrace, sobbing with joy. "My son, my dear son. We thought we had lost you forever." Nathan appeared in the doorway, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Luca," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Is it really you?" Luca turned to his father and nodded. "Yes, Father. I've come home." The three of them embraced, their tears mingling with laughter as they were finally reunited. It was a moment of pure joy, a moment that Luca had dreamed of for so long. But even as they celebrated, Luca knew that his journey was far from over. As the days passed, Luca began to tell his parents about his life with the dragons. He told them about Sailor, the dragon who had taken him in and raised him as her own. He spoke of the lessons he had learned, the challenges he had faced, and the strength he had gained. Delilah and Nathan listened in awe, amazed by the wisdom their son had gained. But as Luca spoke, he noticed a shadow pass over his father's face. Nathan was not just amazed, he was troubled. "Luca," Nathan said one evening, after Luca had finished telling another story, "you've been through so much, and we're so proud of the man you've become. But there's something you need to understand. The world of dragons is not like our world. It's full of danger and mystery, things that humans cannot understand." Luca looked at his father, confused. "What do you mean, Father?" Nathan sighed, his face filled with worry. "The villagers here, they are not like the people of Luma. They don't know about dragons, and they fear what they don't understand. If they find out where you've been, they might not accept you. They might even try to harm you." Luca felt a chill run down his spine. He had never thought about the villagers in that way. He had been so focused on finding his parents that he hadn't considered what might happen if the truth about his past came out. "But I'm still their son," Luca said, his voice trembling. "I'm still human, aren't I?" Delilah placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Of course you are, Luca. But your father is right. People fear what they don't understand. You must be careful." Luca nodded, though his heart was heavy. He had come so far, only to find that his journey was still not over. He would have to navigate the human world with the same caution and wisdom that he had learned from the dragons. As the days turned into weeks, Luca tried to blend in with the villagers, but it was not easy. He had spent so much time among dragons that he found it difficult to relate to the people around him. He was stronger, faster, and more perceptive than any of the other boys his age, and this made them suspicious. One day, as Luca was helping his father in the fields, he noticed a group of boys watching him from a distance. Among them was Maxwell, the son of the village chief. Maxwell was known for his arrogance and jealousy, and he had taken an immediate dislike to Luca. As Luca worked, he could feel their eyes on him, and he knew that trouble was brewing. Maxwell was not the type to let things go, and Luca could sense that the confrontation was inevitable. That evening, as Luca walked home, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned to see Maxwell and his friends following him, their faces filled with malice. "Hey, stranger," Maxwell called out, his voice mocking. "What's a city boy like you doing in our village?" Luca stopped and turned to face them. "I'm not from the city," he said calmly. "I'm from Luma, just like you." Maxwell smirked. "Oh, really? Then why have we never seen you before? You just show up out of nowhere, claiming to be the son of Delilah and Nathan. Who do you think you are?" Luca could feel the tension in the air, but he remained calm. "I'm Luca," he said. "I've been away for a long time, but I've come back to be with my parents." Maxwell's eyes narrowed. "Away? Where? What are you hiding?" Luca hesitated. He knew he couldn't tell them the truth, but he also didn't want to lie. "I've been living in the mountains," he said, choosing his words carefully. I was taken by someone, and I've only just found my way back. Maxwell laughed, but there was no humor in his voice. Taken by someone? That's a nice story, but we don't believe you. You're hiding something, and we're going to find out what it is. Before Luca could react, Maxwell lunged at him, trying to grab the pouch that hung from Luca's belt. Inside the pouch was the dragon scale that Sailor had given him. Luca had kept it close, knowing that it was his only connection to the world he had left behind. But as Maxwell reached for the pouch, Luca's instincts took over. He moved with lightning speed, dodging Maxwell's grasp and pushing him away with a force that sent Maxwell sprawling to the ground. Maxwell's friends stared in shock, their eyes wide with fear. They had never seen anyone move like that, and they knew something was not right. Maxwell scrambled to his feet, his face red with anger and embarrassment. "You're not human," he spat. "You're a freak. We're going to tell everyone what you are." Luca's heart pounded in his chest. He had tried so hard to fit in, to keep his past a secret, but now everything was falling apart. He knew that if Maxwell and his friends told the villagers, there would be no going back. He would be an outcast, feared and hated, just like Sailor. As Maxwell and his friends ran off, Luca stood there, alone and trembling. He knew he had to make a decision. He could stay and try to explain himself, or he could leave and return to the mountains, where he would be safe among the dragons. But as he thought of his parents, he knew he couldn't leave them again. He had to stay and face whatever came next, no matter how difficult it might be. The next morning, the village was buzzing with rumors. Maxwell had wasted no time in spreading the story of his encounter with Luca. People whispered in hushed tones, casting suspicious glances at Luca as he walked through the village. Luca could feel the fear and mistrust growing, and it weighed heavily on his heart. He knew that he couldn't stay hidden forever. Sooner or later, the truth would come out, and when it did, he would have to be ready. As the days passed, Luca tried to go about his life as usual, but it was clear that things had changed. The villagers avoided him, and even his parents seemed worried. Luca could see the fear in their eyes, though they tried to hide it. One evening, as Luca was walking through the forest, he heard a rustling in the bushes. He turned, his senses alert, and saw a figure step out from the shadows. It was Margaret, the old woman who had first told him about his parents. "Margaret," Luca said, surprised to see her. "What are you doing here?" Margaret smiled, her eyes twinkling with wisdom. "I've been watching you, child," she said. "I know what you are, and I know what you're going through." Luca's heart skipped a beat. "You know?" he asked, his voice trembling. Margaret nodded. "I've lived a long life, Luca. I've seen many things, things that others might not understand. But I understand. I know about the dragons, and I know that you're not just an ordinary boy." Luca felt a wave of relief wash over him. Finally, someone who understood. "What should I do, Margaret?" he asked, his voice filled with desperation. "The villagers are afraid of me. They think I'm a monster." Margaret placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch comforting. "You must be true to yourself, Luca. You cannot change who you are, and you should not try. The villagers may fear you, but fear comes from ignorance. Show them who you truly are, and they will see that you are not a monster." Luca listened to her words, feeling a sense of hope. "But how do I do that?" he asked. "How do I show them?" Margaret smiled. "The answer lies within you, child. Trust in yourself and the wisdom you have gained. The time will come when you will have to prove yourself, and when that time comes, you will know what to do." Luca nodded, though he still felt uncertain. But Margaret's words had given him strength, and he knew that he could not run away. He had to stay and face whatever challenges lay ahead. The days passed, and the tension in the village continued to grow. Luca could feel the villagers' fear and suspicion, but he tried to remain calm. He knew that Margaret was right. He had to be true to himself and trust in the lessons he had learned. One evening, as the sun was setting, a loud roar echoed through the village. The ground shook, and the villagers ran out of their homes, terrified. Luca's heart raced as he recognized the sound. It was the roar of a dragon. The villagers gathered in the square, their faces pale with fear. "It's a dragon," someone shouted. "We are under attack." Panic spread through the crowd, and Luca could see the fear in their eyes. But he knew that this was not an attack. He recognized the roar, it was Sailor. Luca pushed through the crowd, his heart pounding. He had to find Sailor before the villagers did something rash. He ran to the edge of the village and looked up at the sky. There, in the distance, he saw her, Sailor, flying towards the village, her massive wings beating against the air. The villagers saw her too, and their fear turned to anger. "We must defend ourselves." Maxwell's father, the village chief, shouted. "We cannot let this beast destroy our village." Luca knew he had to act quickly. He ran to the center of the square and shouted, "Stop! She's not here to harm us." The villagers turned to him, their eyes filled with confusion and suspicion. "What are you talking about?" the chief demanded. "How do you know this dragon?" Luca took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Because I know her," he said. "She's the one who raised me." Gasps of shock rippled through the crowd. The villagers stared at Luca as if he had just confessed to a terrible crime. "You've been living with a dragon," someone shouted. "You're one of them." Luca shook his head. "I'm still human," he said. "But I've learned the ways of the dragons. Sailor is not our enemy. She's my friend, and she's here to help." The chief looked at Luca with a mixture of fear and suspicion. "How do we know you're telling the truth? How do we know this isn't some trick?" Before Luca could respond, Sailor landed at the edge of the square, a massive form casting a shadow over the village. The villagers screamed and backed away, but Luca stood his ground. Sailor lowered her head and looked at Luca with gentle eyes. "My son," she said, her voice a deep, rumbling whisper. "I've come to help you." Luca felt a surge of emotion as he looked up at the dragon who had raised him. "Mother Sailor," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. "I'm so glad you're here." Sailor turned her gaze to the villagers, who were trembling with fear. "I mean you no harm," she said. "I have come to protect you, not to destroy you." The villagers looked at each other, unsure of what to believe. But Luca knew that this was his moment. He had to prove to them that Sailor was not their enemy. "Listen to her," Luca pleaded. "She's telling the truth. Sailor is a guardian, not a monster. She has protected me all these years, and now she wants to protect you too." The chief hesitated, his eyes flickering with doubt. But before he could speak, Maxwell stepped forward, his face twisted with anger. "We can't trust them," he shouted. "They're both monsters. We have to defend ourselves." Luca's heart sank as he saw the fear and anger in Maxwell's eyes. He knew that Maxwell would not listen to reason, and he feared that the villagers would follow him. But before the situation could escalate, a loud rumble echoed through the village, and the ground began to shake. The villagers screamed as the earth cracked open, and a massive creature emerged from the ground. It was a giant serpent, its scales glistening in the fading light, its eyes burning with malice. The serpent let out a deafening hiss, and the villagers cowered in fear. "It's the great serpent of the underworld," someone shouted. "We're doomed." Luca's heart raced as he realized what was happening. The great serpent was a creature of legend, a beast that had been sealed away centuries ago by the guardians of the land. It had been awakened by the fear and anger of the villagers, and now it threatened to destroy everything. Sailor roared, her wings spreading wide as she prepared to defend the village. But Luca knew that she couldn't do it alone. He had to help. Luca turned to the villagers, his voice filled with urgency. "We have to work together," he shouted. "The great serpent is too powerful for any one of us to defeat. But if we join forces, we can stop it." The villagers hesitated, their fear and suspicion holding them back. But as the serpent advanced, its eyes fixed on the village, they realized that they had no choice. The chief stepped forward, his face determined. "He's right," he said. "We must work together. Luca, tell us what to do." Luca nodded, his mind racing as he remembered the lesson Sailor had taught him. "We need to distract the serpent," he said. "While Sailor attacks from above, we'll surround it and drive it back into the ground. But we have to move quickly." The villagers nodded, their fear giving way to resolve. They grabbed whatever weapons they could find, spears, bows, and even farming tools, and prepared to face the serpent. Sailor let out a mighty roar and took to the sky, a massive form casting a shadow over the serpent. The serpent hissed in anger and lunged at her, but Sailor was too quick. She dodged the attack and struck back with her powerful claws. While Sailor kept the serpent distracted, Luca led the villagers in a coordinated attack. They surrounded the serpent, jabbing at it with their weapons, driving it back toward the crack in the earth. The serpent thrashed and hissed, but the combined efforts of Sailor and the villagers were too much for it. With one final roar, the serpent was forced back into the ground, and the crack sealed shut behind it. The villagers let out a cheer of triumph, their fear replaced by relief and gratitude. They turned to Luca and Sailor, their eyes filled with awe and respect. "You saved us," the chief said, his voice filled with emotion. "Both of you." Luca smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "We did it together," he said. "All of us." The villagers gathered around Sailor, their fear replaced by admiration. They had seen the truth with their own eyes. Sailor was not a monster, but a guardian who had come to protect them. As the sun set and the stars began to twinkle in the sky, Luca knew that his journey had come full circle. He had found his true place in the world, a place where he could be both human and dragon, where he could belong to both worlds. Sailor looked down at him with pride and love in her eyes. "You have done well, my son," she said. "You have proven yourself to be a true guardian." Luca smiled, his heart filled with happiness. He knew that his journey was far from over, but he also knew that he was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. With his parents by his side and Sailor watching over him, he was ready to face the world, both human and dragon alike. And so, Luca's story continued, a tale of courage, love, and the power of unity. A tale that would be told for generations to come, a tale that would inspire others to find their true place in the world, just as Luca had found his.